Every 6 months, one European capital passes the baton to another. The presidency of the Council of the European Union rotates between member states, placing one country at the heart of EU decision-making and diplomacy. And as June draws to a close, another handover is about to take place. For the past 6 months, Cyprus has steered the work of the Council through a period marked by geopolitical turmoil, migration challenges, energy insecurity and major political shifts across Europe. And now it's time for Dublin to take the reins. What legacy does Cyprus leave behind? Did it deliver on its ambitions? And what priorities will Ireland bring to the European agenda for the next 6 months? Welcome to Brussels, My Love, the podcast with me, Maeve McMahon. For this episode, I'm thrilled to be joined by Irina Kostaki, EU Affairs correspondent for the Cyprus News Agency. Welcome.
Hello, thank you for having us.
Cynthia Niorku, MEP for Renew Europe Group. Welcome.
Diolch.
And Michalo Cruhor, Secretary General from the European Alliance Group at the Committee of the Regions. But now, back to EU politics and, of course, Cyprus. Tell us, Irina, how have the last 6 months been, and has the small little island managed to tick off all the things on their to-do list?
It's been very intense, to be honest. We had some crises to handle.
Oh, yeah.
And important files to deliver. But I think Cyprus presidency did quite a good job.
And did the war in Iran overshadow or jeopardise the presidency? Some meetings had to be cancelled or postponed?
Yeah, of course they had to be postponed, but it was not an actual choice of the presidency. It was due to transportation issues that arose due to the attack on the British base. But this finished quite quickly and everything was running in full speed almost immediately in the island. And the Cyprus presidency managed to have the informal summit in April and to also deliver on the priorities that involved the European Union approaching a bit more the Middle East region. For example, Cyprus' focus on the Middle East was not part of the crisis that emerged during the presidency. It was a part of the priorities, and President Christodoulidis had already urged during the time of the inauguration of the presidency, President of the European Council, Costa and von der Leyen, to visit the countries in the area. So they did a visit in Syria, Lebanon and Jordan before everything happened.
What your perception from the Committee of the Regions has been of this period?
I think that the Cypriots have done an exceptional job. I think it was Mike Tyson that said, everything will go well until you get a good old punch in the face and knock you on the canvas and you have to get up again. And from day one of the Cypriot presidency, there was different crises caused by some world leaders as well in different parts of the world. And the Cypriots were on a reactive mode. So the lesson I would take for the Irish presidency, and that is be prepared for the unexpected.
Cynthia Niorku, as an MEP from Ireland, is Ireland prepared to take on this baton now? And what are your expectations for the presidency?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the listeners might say, well, she'd say that, wouldn't she anyway? But like the Cyprus and the Cypriot government, there's a lot of preparation has gone into taking over this presidency. We're talking about years in the making, not just from the point of view of human resources in the Irish Permanent Representation, which is basically the civil service now on steroids out here in Brussels, but also in terms of resources like buildings and building up every level, whether it's making sure that the Irish language, my pet love, that the Irish language is fully recognised and fully to the forefront during the presidency, because this is our first presidency since Ireland and Irish Gaeilge has got its official status. So the Cypriots, I agree with Michal completely. They have done superbly well. They have handled the budget and moved it along nicely. We're talking about the budget that will unfold or begin in 2028 until 34. But of course, we need to try and come to conclusions within the Irish presidency. And also, they maintained the focus despite all the crises and all the hiccups and so forth. And they were very serious, and they are still, but they maintained the focus on security and defence because that is vital. So the themes of the Irish presidency are very much in alignment with the Cypriot presidency, because we are talking about competitiveness, we are talking about security and defence, and our third priority then is values. And of course, from the point of view of values, which again is very much a sore point for me, because I sit on the European Democracy Shield Committee, the temporary committee that is set up, but we have another crisis in Europe, and that is the rise of the far right. And that's not going away tomorrow or the next day. That's here to stay. And that's I predict that's only going to get worse. We think in Ireland we're insulated, but I'm delighted to see that on Taoiseach Micheál Martin and the government, which is a coalition of two parties and independents, of course, but that they are very aware of that.
And we're seeing that rise of the far right, if you like, inside the European Parliament chamber. We saw it just the other day in Strasbourg over the returns directive. There was chants in the chamber, some shouting, send them back, and others shouting, shame on you. That's a bit of a glimpse, really, of politics today.
It's shocking. And could I just say, before Micheál comes in, the rise of the far right, has that influenced the arrival of the Taliban in Brussels this week? I'm absolutely disgusted. I just need to get that off my chest.
That is a topic
from
that
the
everyone's
get-go.
getting off their chest this week.
I associate that with the rise of the far right, and the far right in the Parliament being entertained by the likes of the EPP. And yes, this is a dig at the EPP, because they do sit down now and do deals with the far right because they don't have the cordon sanitaire. But has that led to the decision to give a one-day visa to the Taliban to come over for some technical meeting to talk about a returns policy?
And of course,
Micheál.
We've no one over here, we've no one on the panel from the EPP to reflect on this, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
I mean, we also, it was not just that the Taliban coming, it was representatives from 15 member states out of the 20 that have requested the Commission to facilitate this meeting, that attended the meeting. But unfortunately, the permanent representations are not that open to disclose who attended the meeting and who did not.
Yeah, and the Taliban, if they were sitting around the table here, they wouldn't even look at me.
No,
of course.
As a woman.
Sorry, Maeve, you wouldn't have received even your junior cert. Mm-hmm. They say to little girls, you don't go beyond 6th class. And then they say, by the way, you're married off to that older guy there.
I think it's shocking what is happening via the Taliban, but it raises the whole issue in terms of how we deal with democracy, rule of law, but also with fake news. I think that fake news isn't a new phenomenon. We knew that many years ago in the lead up to Brexit with the fake news of bent bananas the size of post boxes.
And
now
this week you mentioned Brexit, of course, we marked 10 years.
10 years, I mean, it's extraordinary. I did a Radio na Gaeltachta programme, which is the Irish language radio, on the 10 years of Brexit, and how now we want to repair the relations, the damage that has been created by effectively fake news, and we didn't address it. And if we don't start addressing it, and the Commissioner, Michael McGrath, is making huge inroads in terms of addressing this and just having ensured that there is transparency and fairness, but I think it's local and regional government will have to do it as well as national government.
And the media.
And the media in particular. I will honestly say that things like podcasts, etc., Twitter, you're talking to your own people, or X, and some of the other social media. We have to go back to the traditional media. Mm-hmm. So I love podcasts when I go on the bike or go running, etc., half an hour podcast, but go back to your local media as well. And this is something that we have forgotten in a lot of cases.
And one good thing that has arisen in this mandate, I've only been in this mandate, Maeve, as you know, so I can't compare it to others, but Ursula von der Leyen, she did a good thing when she set up the UDS, the European Democracy Shield, that temporary committee, as well as the Housing Committee, but I want to focus on UDS. And she did a good thing when she appointed a commissioner to that portfolio, as well as there's other briefs within his portfolio. I get that. And it happens to be the Irish Commissioner, Michael McGrath. But I'm also pleased, just to let the listeners know, that the UDS committee has produced a policy paper which is outlining in very specific terms what we should be doing to counter this far right. And there's a lot of interesting stuff in it, like setting up a media centre, a media monitoring centre in Europe, for example, but also funding the local radio stations, funding through the Commission Iman that we have in Ireland, or the commission that's elsewhere in all the member states, but funding local news, trusted journalism at the local level, whether it's in print, whether it's on radio, whether it's TV.
Trying to break it all down for our listeners, I want to go back, though, to the fact that Dublin will be in the spotlight for the next 6 months. You mentioned Roberta Metsola, the President of the Parliament, was there recently. We'll see a lot of more visits like this happening in the next 6 months.
It's just starting.
It's just starting. So we were curious to hear how locals in Ireland feel, so we sent our reporter, Aaron Casey, to ask them.
Well, for me, I work in the city centre in Dublin, and obviously the main day-to-day issue here is the congestion. So imagining how the presidency is going to add on to that with the events and street closures and such, I worry that it's going to get people pretty angry, especially if they don't understand why it's happening.
It's going to be great. I'm sure there's certain groups will use it as a platform, as a right to protest, but there's plenty measures being put in place to account for this.
Obviously, there might be some logistical or resource challenges, having to balance American tech interests with the EU that's trying to regulate those MNCs. That being said, it's often crisis moments like COVID that define a presidency. So if Ireland is able to come out unscathed, I think it'll really benefit our international standing.
The rotating presidency trades some practical efficiencies against greater member population awareness and engagement with EU policy.
It's great for the country, and there's been lots of preparation put in place. So, yeah.
I think that we could really be such a key target for cyber attacks, and now that we have the EU presidency as well, I think that could just be such a big danger.
So there you go, a couple of different voices. One worried about the traffic. I mean, that's a valid point.
Of course.
Especially in November when Dublin's planning to host the European political community. This is a massive summit. Where will even these people sleep?
Yes.
Any tips from the Cypriots here?
They did not host an EPC. EPC happens to the second
And just to
semester
remind our listeners, EPC,
presidencies.
we're talking about non-official EU member states, but like aspiring EU member states, former EU member states like the UK.
EU and friends, let's say.
EU and friends, yes.
Well, the thing is, sorry, maybe the glass is always half full for me. I mean, the Irish are good at politics. We're also good at hosting big events. Like we've
we're
done
not good at logistics.
Yes, well, sorry, hold on now. We've hosted.
We don't even have a metro.
Maeve, I was a cub reporter way back in my 20s, which is like centuries ago. And I remember I was in Dublin Castle and it was organised very well then. Yes, of course, we had a population explosion. Yes, of course, the EU has multiplied by several since then. But we've done this before and we've done it well. And we are preparing. I'll go back to the preparedness piece. Not only have we been getting more civil servants and more buildings in Brussels and back in Ireland, but we've also been beefing up on security and beefing up on our tech security as well.
We will see how much journalists will nag if there is a perimeter that makes them walk like 40 minutes before
exactly,
they
because you
can
mentioned
reach
journalists.
the
There'll be a big
centre.
press trip.
Yes, but they'll have lovely pubs to call into on the way to the press
Lovely
centre.
pubs, but I really hope in July that some of the leaders will go to an All-Ireland hurling final, an All-Ireland football final, because that'll compound the issues in terms of transport. But I'm delighted to see so many meetings outside of Dublin. As someone that comes from the southwest, and it's just a huge pity they're not going back as far as Dingle, the most beautiful part of the
It's an
world.
awful pity. I did a lot of advocating to get it into Ireland South, to get it to the most picturesque end of Ireland South.
But
well, I saw
there's-
Martha Cost got a trip to Newgrange.
Newgrange,
enlargement.
and there is also one in Mayo,
Yes.
hopefully, and they're also in the quarterfinals. So
But this
that's-
sounds all very delightful for European commissioners and European journalists who will be
Yes.
shown the best of Ireland. But what about locals? What about Irish people? How will they be brought along the way
This is
here?
really, really interesting because the Irish have come up with a scheme that they pair a member state with a county. So, Maeve, there is a great county called Meath.
That's right.
And that's linked to now your county,
The Royal County.
and that's linked to Italy. And
Yes.
the same. So
Same thing for Cork there with France.
Yeah, and so I went and I
Okay.
asked a young person that's doing just a week program in my office to go through and say, what does it actually mean? What are you going to do? So what they're doing is that in Donegal, which is paired with Poland,
Yes.
they will look at doing something with the Polish community there and show the integration and the benefits of Europe and how people move around. So I hope that we can build upon that and that the Kerry people are linked to Czechia. I'm not sure whether they're learning hurling, but I'm sure there's a GA club
Brilliant.
that is there.
And I hope we don't leave out Northern Ireland. You mentioned Brexit. We won't go on a sidetrack now, but very
Yes.
important. As Micheál said and linked it in very clearly there, right wing, look at what's happened over the last 10 years. It's been a disaster. How many prime ministers have we had? Seven in 10 years, is it? Okay. Anyway, you know the arguments. But what's really important is that we do bring it back to the local people, that we do explain to them, this is not a transactional cost. So people will be on the radio, and they're right to, and those people who are Vox Popped, and they will say, it's not good value for money. What are we getting back? If this is going to cost us so many millions, what are we getting back? It's not transactional like that. We are going to get back in the long term, in the short term, with an awful lot of files that we want to get a good result for Ireland. For example, the CAP budget. For example, you know, the win on the tech giants and so forth, even though we house a lot of the tech giants.
Yeah, but sometimes it could get uncomfortable. Just maybe the last word, perhaps, with Arena there, advice from the Cypriots. You know, there could be moments when the Irish government will have to make uncomfortable decisions, be the so-called honest broker here, decisions that the Irish population might not like.
Okay, this will happen when a member state holds the presidency. They take a little step back to look at the whole picture. Of course, you cannot hold your member state's flag when you are the honest broker on the table. So you may leave on the side some painful issues and might not push as your permanent representative would on the table if you were not holding the presidency.
And just a final point, Micheál, with you, just on the Brussels scene and the cultural scene, I've been getting asked by many people, what's going on during the Irish presidency in Brussels? They think it's going to be like St. Patrick's Day for 6 months.
I tell you, it is going to be amazing. Amazing.
It's kicking off with a huge concert.
On the 7th of July, there's a massive concert in Flagey. That's good. The Femmes de l'Europe are doing a huge concert again in October. There's going to be a festival around Sound, the whole concept of Halloween. There's an Aigsha being proposed of Irish literature, etc. in September. I sat with the Irish ambassador to Belgium last week with a whole range of community groups. We are going to be inundated with fantastic music, dance, song, and scialach storytelling.
Because isn't that the kind of positivity we need in our lives?
Yes, exactly. What about the food?
The food is going on the
We're
first.
not great for food.
No, on the 1st of July, the Committee of the Regions plenary, we are going to have a Projects and Products of Ireland event, and that will be with the Irish dancing. And there's going to be tasting products from all around the place, and I think that is going to kick off an amazing feat. Don't think about the past. Ireland is an amazing country for food, and nowhere like
Tanga, and of course our mana, our motto for this presidency is Níneart go cur le chéile. Unity with strength is how they're translating it, which I love. Níneart go cur le chéile. I hope every Dalta Sculla will have that learnt off by December 31st.
So there you go on that conclusion. Níneart go cur le chéile, strength with unity. We can bring this podcast to an end. Thank you so much, Irina, for being with us. Cynthia
Thank you for having me.
And Micheál O'Cruher for that lively discussion. And thank you so much to all our listeners. We hope if you're in Brussels, you're coping with the heat. If you're not, tell us where you are and how you're doing. Our email address is brusselsmylove@euronews.com. Big thanks, of course, to all those behind the scenes here at Euronews, our sound technician, Yorgos Liveritis, our Brussels My Love podcast producer, Alicia Carnivale, and our social media aides, Aaron Casey, Ava Brult, and Victoria Harrison. You can also, of course, find this podcast wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or, of course, on YouTube. And if you like it, tell your friends and see you soon.